Morning, it's 10 o'clock. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. Former US President Donald Trump has told a pro-gun convention America should prioritise funding for school security over aid to Ukraine. The summit was held just days after the murder of 19 children and 2 adults in a primary school in Texas. Hundreds of protesters are demonstrating outside the National Rifle Association meeting in the state. Mr. Trump rejected calls for gun control and says instead there should be a top-to-bottom overhaul of school security.
There should be strong exterior fencing, metal detectors, and the use of new technology to make sure that no unauthorized individual can ever enter the school with a weapon. No one should ever be able to get anywhere near a classroom until they have been checked, scanned, screened, and fully approved.
Meanwhile, there's growing anger towards the police over their response to the attack. Survivors, including children, were calling emergency services for help from the classroom long after 18-year-old Salvador Ramos had entered with a semi-automatic rifle. Police officers were in the hallway outside waiting for more assistance. Colonel Stephen McCraw, director of the Texas Department of Public Safety, says officers should have acted sooner.
Hey, from the benefit of hindsight, where I'm sitting now, of course it was not the right decision. It was the wrong decision, period. There's no excuse for that. But again, I wasn't there, but I'm just telling you, from what we know, we believe there should have been an entry at that as soon as you can.
Ukraine's military says its soldiers may need to retreat from their last stronghold in the east of the country to avoid being captured. Officials say Russian troops have entered the Luhansk region, but their attacks are being repelled so far. Moscow has sent thousands of troops into the region, attacking from 3 sides in an attempt to encircle Ukrainian forces holding out in the city of Severodonetsk. In the last hour, Chelsea Football Club have confirmed that the sale of the club will go ahead. In a statement posted online, they said a final agreement was entered into last night to sell the club to Todd Boy Clearlake Capital Consortium. Chelsea were put up for sale in March when owner Roman Abramovich was sanctioned due to his links to the Russian President Vladimir Putin. It's expected that the deal will be completed on Monday. Boris Johnson has been accused of misleading Parliament by one of his own MPs as the number of Tories calling for him to resign over number 10 lockdown parties continues to grow. Veteran Conservative MP Sir Bob Neill and 2019 entrant Alicia Kearns both voiced concerns with Prime Minister's insistence that he'd not broken coronavirus rules by attending leaving dues for departing officials. Sir Bob Neill has also submitted his letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister to the influential 1922 committee. Labour is accusing Boris Johnson of watering down the ministerial code to save his own skin after Partygate. A government policy statement says ministers will no longer automatically be sacked for minor violations of the code. Instead, they'll be ordered to issue a public apology or face a salary suspension. It's as the Prime Minister faces an inquiry by the Commons Privileges Committee into whether he misled Parliament over Partygate. EasyJet says it's cancelling around 2,400 flights over the next 10 days from Gatwick, starting from today. The airline says the move isn't connected to the IT issues they were experiencing earlier this week. They apologise for the cancellations, but they say they're necessary to provide reliable services over the busy half-term break. Thousands of people are gathering in Belfast today to celebrate the centenary of the creation of Northern Ireland. There are speeches outside Stormont this morning with a parade into Belfast city centre. There were plans to celebrate 100 years since partition last year, but events had to be postponed because of the pandemic. And the stakes are high as 60,000 Liverpool fans travel to Paris for tonight's Champions League final clash with Real Madrid. The Reds will take on the Spanish champions at the Stade de France. However, fears were raised over the pitch at the stadium after it emerged it was only laid on Thursday because of the late allocation of the game in February. The final was originally meant to be held in St. Petersburg, but it was moved to Paris after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now it's back to Esther and Philip.
Good morning, you're watching and listening to GB News. Coming up on Saturday morning with Esther and Philip.
Boris Johnson has urged the public to move on after Sue Gray's much-anticipated report was published on Wednesday. We take a look at what's been a turbulent week for the Prime Minister.
Chancellor Rishi Sunak has announced a £400 discount on all energy bills, part funded by a windfall tax on oil and gas company profits. What does this mean for households across the UK?
And we discuss comedy in the 21st century after Wreckage of Aids found himself in hot water following jokes made on his most recent stand-up show.
And we want to hear from you this morning, so if you want to get involved in the show, please email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk or you can tweet us at gbnews.
Well, there's certainly a lot going on all week, but before all of that, we're delighted to say we're joined again in the studio by founder and CEO of Downtown in Business, that's Frank McKenna. So, Frank, what has caught your eyes in the paper this week?
Good morning, guys. Great to see you again. So, a few things. I think the first thing from a business perspective, we've had a group of leading entrepreneurs, business leaders from across the country calling on the Chancellor to relook at his plans to increase corporation tax. Currently 19%, about to go up to 25% by 2025. You'll be aware of the pressures and the contraction of the economy over the past 2 years due to all sorts of things, mostly, of course, COVID and potentially the reaction to that, which we may get into a bit later on. But the headline in the Times was cancel tax rise to boost investment, say business chiefs. I thought the headline could have been business leaders call on a Tory government to be conservative.
Oh, I'm with you. I will be calling on that as well, Frank. Don't you worry, as you well know.
Because of...
You're being controversial this morning, Frank.
We've had 18 tax rises of one way or another over the past 7 or 8 years. Conservative administration during that time. And I do think that, you know, when you start to consider and reflect how we need to get the economy moving again, then this idea of sort of silver bullets, you know, a handout here, a gimmick there, it's not going to help in the longer term future of economic growth. So we really do need to get back to the point of seeing who grows the economy, who drives jobs, who brings investment, and that's business. And I'm not seeing many things that are coming from government, from the Chancellor, to suggest that they're getting that. And you know, it's quite surprising, isn't it, that you've actually got, as I say, a Conservative administration, and we're actually having to call for tax cuts.
And I think, you know, there's lots of things to unpick there. You know, people question even the windfall tax. I mean, how does business know what's happening if out of the blue they can be taxed on something? Why go into something speculative that could give high gains, also gives big losses if you don't know what's going to happen? And actually, Philip and I, we were talking about this a little bit earlier on. What is the upset now on the Conservative backbenchers that Boris has to worry about? Is it the Sue Gray report? We'll be talking about that a little bit later on. Or is it not being a Conservative and introducing these tax increases and not being a champion for business, which we have always been, but at the moment it's getting lost?
Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs, isn't it, really, when you've got a self-confessed Blairite, new Labour man, telling us Conservatives that you need to be more pro-business, you need to cut taxes. I mean, what a sad state of affairs.
Hey, but Blair's coming back, isn't he? He's got a big expo going on.
Yeah.
Will you be there cheering in the front crowd?
I will be there. I will be there. I don't think it's going to be a new political party. It's certainly not the the product that's being sold to me, should I say. But there's some interesting...
So have they been in touch with you about this?
On the 30th.
OK, well, give us a little bit of... It's in the papers today. Give us a little bit of an insight. What's happening with this
it's
event?
A conference that's
Blair's doing?
Pulled together, Future Britain, because, you know, Blair and some of the people around Tony Blair, he runs an institute now that does come up with some fantastic ideas, in my opinion.
Give us a job.
Very
qualified that, didn't he?
Very business-friendly, I have to say. And the conference is pulling together some internationally renowned speakers, but also people like Ruth Davidson. So I'll be really interested to hear what she's got to say. And, you know, it's a progressive audience, I suppose it would be described as, and there's even talk of President Macron being there. So it'll be an interesting day.
And various MPs who crossed the floor from various parties to go into that other failed party, kept changing its name, change.org, they're meant to be speaking as well.
I think that is probably the reason why nobody would be daft enough to try and establish a new political party, and it's about influencing policy.
Yeah.
And as I say, you know, when you have a situation where a Prime Minister's questions, the Prime Minister is accusing the Leader of Opposition of wanting to cut taxes, you have to start to shake your head and wonder which party is which.
Well, if this conference is going to be proposing tax cuts,
we'll be there.
Invite us along. We'll be cheerleading.
Well, I'll be proposing tax cuts at the conference, for sure.
Esther, what caught your eye in the paper?
Well, this is a most unusual story, and I wanted to... it was really the headline, and it was author of How to Murder Your Husband found guilty of murdering her husband. And I thought, well, gosh, I've got to read this. What's going on here? I didn't say, gosh,
should I be worried about this?
I didn't think I've got to read it to get clues. I just thought, what had gone on here? And there, many years back, she'd had a brainstorming session. Don't ever write anything down when you're having a brainstorming session about murdering somebody if you're going to do it. You know, she says, I'm a romantic suspense writer. I've spent a lot of time thinking about, obviously, murdering people. I've also thought a lot of time about what police do and how they investigate and what I needed to do. And then she goes into the ins and outs. Would it be with a knife? Would it be with poison?
Is this romantic?
Would it be with a... Well, no, this is obviously, well, a suspense writer. I don't know whether the romance has gone. The romance obviously died a long time ago. This is the end of the romance. But I thought, well, that's how you found out. And in a way, I guess, you know, it's positive news that she left all of these sort of trails so that she could be convicted. But what an unusual story.
Should I be worried that you've been writing notes?
Only on this story.
Yeah, she also, you know, she's always watching these true crime things as well, you know, on the telly where people have... Yeah, well, she's making notes on that as well. I think I am going to get...
Anyway, so that was what I thought there. But I suppose you never do know your other half. And statistically, it's more likely that the person who will, if you are going to be killed, is your other half or somebody that you know. I'm just putting that thought out there, a bit morbid for this time in the morning. But there we go. Just thought I'd leave that with you.
Listeners, the three of us have been involved in politics for that long. We all know about backstabbing.
Yeah, well, that is true.
It's the people that are behind you you've got to be more worried about in Parliament than those.
Yeah, well, I always think when... I remember, I think it was when Vince Cable said he was right behind Nick Clegg, and I always used to say, well, that's where you want to be when you want to stab somebody in the back, isn't it? Right behind them. Yeah, no, exactly. Well, the story that caught my eye this week, it must have caught a lot of people's eye, was about this Japanese man. Did you see this, Frank, who paid £12,500 to become a dog? And, you know, you can't make this stuff up, can you? This chap called Toko, he commissioned an agency called Zeppert, who took 40 days to make it. And he there... I mean, if you see the pictures of this...
There he is.
There he is. It looks like Lassie. But that, actually, is a human being in there.
It's a model, and you're quite right. I had to stare at this picture for a long time because I thought, well, it's not April the 1st, it's not a Fool's Day. It genuinely was him inside, and I thought, what is that all about? That you don't want to be a human anymore, you want to be a dog?
See, there's obviously no cost of living crisis in Japan if people are splashing out $12,500 for a dog suit.
Or maybe it was if he's eating dog food.
I thought, look, this is where it's going. Transgender is yesterday's news, Frank. We're now trans-species.
How are schools going to react if kids start going and saying, I want to be a dog?
Yeah,
and my new name is Lassie.
Self-identifying as a dog. But the thing I didn't understand with the picture is, I looked at the picture and I thought, how small is this bloke? Because, I mean, He didn't look like a 6-footer, did he? Squeezing into that costume.
Well, we don't know, do we? Don't know. That dog could be more of an elephant or a wolf. We don't know. We've only seen the picture. But I have to tell you, it's super scary to think that that's what somebody would want to do.
And that they can actually do it.
Yes.
You know, the fact that they want to get it done is one thing, but the fact that people are prepared to enable them to do that, it is scary.
Frank, you'll be back at 11 o'clock. Thank you very much indeed for your view on the papers this morning. So, Phil?
Now, Boris Johnson has said the country must move on from Partygate after Sue Gray's much-anticipated report was published this week.
The Prime Minister played down his personal involvement in the Downing Street gatherings, but said he took full responsibility and that he said he overwhelmingly believes he should remain in office despite public anger.
To talk about the events of Wednesday, we're joined by the Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, Henry Hill. Henry, thank you very much for joining us. So how much danger is the Prime Minister in? We keep seeing lots of people now coming out saying, you know, I've put in a letter of no confidence, the Prime Minister's got to go, I would resign if I was the Prime Minister. How much peril do you think he's in?
Well, for now, he does seem, at least in terms of his job, to have steered through the rocks. Tory MPs are the ones who decide whether or not there's going to be a vote of no confidence, and they do not seem to want to hold one at the moment. So for the next few weeks, at least, he's all right. I think the crucial thing was the fact that he didn't receive any more fines from the police. For me, the big test is going to be the 2 by-elections next month. There's 2 very important by-elections, one in the red wall, one in the blue wall. If the Tories do badly in both, that might start getting more MPs thinking, actually, this man might be about to lose us our seats. The signs aren't good. There was a YouGov poll out, I think, yesterday, which showed that the Tories are actually behind Labour in all but 3 of 80 seats that they sort of won and held over Labour at the last election, which would obviously destroy the Conservatives' overall majority. So, for the moment, he's safe, but we'll have to see whether or not he can recover the Tory electoral position before the summer. Well,
thank you for highlighting that poll, Henry. That poll included the fact that the Conservatives would lose my constituency at the next election as well. So I'm delighted that you highlighted that one. So look, in terms of predictions, is Boris going to lead the Conservatives into the next general election, do you think? And if he does, do you think he can win an overall majority, or is that now a difficult thing to perceive?
I think at the moment it would probably be odds on for him to lead the party into the next election, just because if nothing else, Conservative MPs just don't seem willing to act, and if they don't act, nothing happens. As to whether or not he can win an overall majority, 2 years is a long time, or a year and a half, or however long it is David Canzini is telling Tory MPs it is before they're going to have the next one. I don't think Partygate in and of itself is the kind of story that destroys governments. If the government pulls its finger out, takes a really aggressive approach to the cost of living crisis, if in 18 months' time voters generally think that it's been there for them and on their side during this very difficult time, then of course he can be re-elected. He's not going to not be re-elected over Partygate. But if it doesn't, if it seems to fall short, and if voters in those constituencies that voted Tory for the first time feel that they have not got anything for voting Tory, then it can become a lightning rod for existing anger. So he can win. Of course he can win. I don't think any government's ever truly doomed, except maybe John Major's. But we will have to see if he can salvage it.
What's doing more harm to him, the Sue Gray report, or the fact that for many Conservatives he's not following Conservative philosophy and Conservative policies?
I think amongst Tory MPs, there's definitely a lot of anger about the latter. Also, part of Boris Johnson's problem, I think, is he's been so focused on winning those red wall seats that he's starting to alienate a lot of traditional Conservative voters, sort of in the South, especially in the better off voters. And some of them are just flirting with the Liberal Democrats, not because the Liberal Democrats are more right wing, but just because the Liberal Democrats are sort of more in touch with them on issues like housing and things like that. So he always had a very difficult position to build a Tory coalition that could appeal to the red wall, these new seats that he won for the first time in 2019, and appeal to the Conservative Party's traditional base. I'm not sure he's entirely got that balance right yet, and he's running out of time to do it, because if he focuses too much on one bit of the country, then the other bit might walk away from him, and you need both to deliver that extraordinary result we saw in 2019.
But who could replace him? I mean, that's the big issue people are talking about. If not Boris, who?
I mean, it's an excellent question. Since the basic, maybe Rishi Sunak's recovery if he recovers with this latest patch of cost of living measures, maybe he'll go back to being the heir apparent. But ever since his collapse, one of the things I think holding Tory MPs back is that there's no obvious successor, meaning that if you do get rid of Boris Johnson, you have to go through quite a long and convoluted leadership process with an entirely uncertain outcome. Because it's a Pandora's box. Different candidates have their strengths, but at the moment, there is no standout successor, and that is one thing I think holding people back from sending letters in.
Henry, I just wondered about the speculation in the papers that David Canzini had said that there could be an election next year rather than 2024, when most people are expecting one. Do you think that that's a realistic option, or is that just flying a kite to keep everybody disciplined?
I mean, it depends on how things are going. I think if the government are ahead in the polls, it's actually before the Fixed Term Parliaments Act, it was very unusual for a government to run the full 5 years. It's actually turned out to be even more unusual since the Fixed Term Parliaments Act, but that's a very strange piece of legislation. But I think it would be perfectly plausible for the government to go for a sort of a 4-year term if they thought they were in a position to win in the autumn of 23, rather than pushing it all the way into 2024. But that will, I think, depend on the Conservatives having recovered their position a bit, and that doesn't give them a lot of time to do it. So we'll have to see what the Prime Minister has in his back pocket to win over the public.
Henry Hill, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning and giving us your views on the situation at the moment. It's a difficult week, wasn't it?
It was a difficult week, although it probably was a bit of a damp squib in many respects. I always think in Parliament is that actually when it's a big planned event, it never really ever happens. You know, people are thinking this is going to be the end of the.
This is going to be the knockout punch.
Exactly. It never happens. It usually happens when people aren't expecting it. And when people are expecting a big rebellion, it never ever happens. But what do you think? Do you think?
I think it went quiet. You're quite right. People were expecting, what was coming. So you're right. They're all prepared, all braced, all got the lines for it. I think it was telling when people left the chamber. Maybe not wanting to be seen in back of shot, maybe not wanting to look as if they were endorsing the Prime Minister, didn't really know what had happened, were questioning, could he really not have known what was going on? I think that's telling. Always look who sat behind the Prime Minister at a big event, a big set-piece event. And if you see there's not many people there, that shows that his backbenchers are uncertain. They might not deliver the killer blow, but that says they're all talking amongst themselves and sort of figuring out where they're going. So I think that, to me, was really telling who was in the chamber and what was being said.
I think he's certainly got work to do to win lots of people back round, whether they be voters or MPs. So
and it was a lot of people who came out, wasn't it? Paul Holmes, Stephen Hammond, Julian Sturdy, John Barron, David Simmons. Some of those were Brexiteers, some of them were Remainers, some were old-standing colleagues, some were brand-new intake, saying we don't support you anymore.
And that, I guess, will be the biggest worry for the Prime Minister, that they're not just coming from one place.
Yes.
The criticism's coming from right across the party. So I think there's more to go.
But enough letters in for a vote of no confidence? Nobody thinks so yet. You don't know. You'll never know until it happens. And the person who's in charge of those letters is incredibly discreet, and nothing is said before then. People say, we know of 22 letters, but it has to get up to 54. There could be a lot more. So 22 are those people who've come out and said, we've put a letter in. There'll be lots who won't say the letter will just be in there.
It doesn't feel as if we're close to 54 letters, though.
No.
Right, coming up after the break, we're talking about the cost of living and announcements made this week by Chancellor Rishi Sunak.
And we want to hear from you today. So if you want to get involved in the conversation on anything we're talking about or anything you want to talk about, then email us at gbnews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning with Esther and Philip. Now, lots of you have been getting in touch. Esther,
I have indeed. We've got one here about Partygate, and Clive says, do you know what? I wasn't concerned about Partygate, but I find myself very concerned about the treatment of staff, which is totally unacceptable. And those are the people there who were the cleaners and various other people who were working in number 10. Well, point well made there, Clive. And Yvonne says, I did not vote for Carrie Green Johnson, but for the Prime Minister, and that's what I want, a Conservative Prime Minister.
On the dog guy that we mentioned earlier, Phil says the guy in the dog suit walks into a shop and asks for half a pound of sausages, and the owner replied, I'm sorry, you can't be served, you are barking. So that's our first joke of the day.
Lousy joke of the
yeah,
day,
exactly.
We read it out.
There was a groan there. And Stephen says, I do not believe that every household in the country should all receive £400 each, a complete and utter waste of money. Many households will not need that money, and it should be targeted at those who do. Throwing money away, absolute madness, which brings us nicely on to this week, Chancellor Rishi Sunak announcing that all households will get a minimum of £400 off their energy bills this October, part funded by a windfall tax on gas and oil company profits.
Sunak has been urged by opposition parties to help millions across the country by introducing a windfall tax. And Labour's Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves said the government had finally come to their senses.
So joining us to discuss that is Justin Urquhart Stewart, a friend of the show, to talk to us. So what did you make of the Chancellor's package, and do you agree with Stephen that he shouldn't have been spraying money at every household even if they don't need it?
Well, to carry on the dog theme, frankly, it's 3 stops short of Dagenham. Which is parking, if you know the district line. It's the wrong target. It should be much more targeted, far more targeted. Thank you very much for giving me 400 quid. Best of all, I don't actually need 400 quid. Much better, don't give it to me because am I going to give it to somebody else? Well, I'd like to think so, but that won't happen.
Okay, just throw this in, rather than making a complicated administration system. Sometimes they say it is easier to hand it to everybody because more money would be wasted not doing that. Is that a good enough excuse?
Actually, I don't think it's a good enough excuse. If you were going to try and do that, you'd probably make sure, pay it to everyone and make it tax deductible, taxable rather, and try and do that. No, use the money much more specifically, and particularly for a politician. I think one of the most important things is to make sure the right story is coming out. You're helping the weakest there, those with the broadest shoulders, etc., and all of that. But also, this is looking at the wrong end of the barrel. This is the result of the problem. How do you actually deal with it? Now, I appreciate with the global inflation, commodities and a war, all those things going on, and the pandemic, but we don't spend so much. We don't encourage people to do things like very serious insulation, which doesn't have to be that expensive, to start cutting down on those things. We know our housing stock is not very good. So more focus on that, actually spending money which is actually improving things going on and making it more targeted. And we said a few months ago, the last budget, well, spring statement, you're going to have to do another one in a few months' time. We were being laughed at. And there we are. You could see this coming. And there's more to come this autumn more inflation to come.
But in terms of helping people, targeting it, isn't it the case that actually it's not just the people on the lowest incomes who are struggling to pay the bills at the moment. There's an awful lot of people who are struggling to pay the bills much higher up the income stream whose bills have gone up massively. And so isn't that why the Chancellor was right to say, well, I'm not going to just focus it on a small number of people, because actually there's a massive number of people struggling.
Which is why, therefore, this should have been taken much more seriously. I think really people did the maths to start with, and actually, if it goes up by 100%, and then again, what's the impact on most people? The answer is this is economically as dangerous as the pandemic, because you're effectively then going to find people in serious economic poverty. I know people always talk about people below the poverty line in this country. No, not compared to these emerging economies, they're not. They're actually better off. But some people are now going to be in a very difficult position this winter, and I don't think this really gives them that one vital word that you need to run an economy: confidence. That it's going to be okay. Here is actually how we're going to keep the economy, get it growing, allowing people to be starting more jobs, even getting better pay and those sort of things. By the way, here's some incentive to make sure you control your power bills by having serious insulation done.
Now, this was support for individuals, and Philip and I was getting the train back down to London last night, and everybody, as you know, comes over and has a chat with you, what's happening here, what's happening there. And these were business people saying, we are absolutely petrified of our bills going up. People who own in pubs, restaurants, factories, it doesn't matter what, it's like trebling 25k to 75k for their energy bills. I'm just wondering, are we doing enough or anything to support businesses, and are we overlooking the wealth creators?
Yeah, and that's the key element. We've discussed this before. Good bits in our economy is we're good at starting businesses. We're good entrepreneurs and developing things. We're bad at financing them for growth, but we're good at that bit. We're really good at technology. But there are those other businesses which are being, and there's a very sad story about a lot of the chippies, with obviously a shortage of oil, sunflower oil and things like that, in terms of then the cost of fish, because they can't afford it because of what's happening with Russia, where a lot of the cod comes from, or would be coming from. And as you say, those bills rising to levels which they have not catered for in their margins. That's pushing it all the way through. So yes, this is going to have a much bigger impact, which is why this is as dangerous as the pandemic. And of course, people die in the pandemic, and that's horrific. But this isn't done properly. This will cause
so can we see
much more
Rishi
pain.
coming back with a package for businesses? Then with their, do we think that?
If it'll be, it needs more thinking through as to what they should be doing. This doesn't look as though it's been thought through properly.
The other thing I was looking at with businesses need stability. They need to know where they're going. They need to have confidence. And to just say, oh, we've just thought now we're going to do some kind of windfall tax, we're going to do something else. I'm wondering what is happening in the minds of businesses. Will they want to be in the UK? Are they thinking of not doing speculative deals? How impactful is this budget going to be long-term on the country and on businesses investing here?
Back to that word, confidence. How many businesses now are going to say, we're going to reinvest right now? Well, unless I've got a particular incentive to do so, because we see the economy growing and the market improving, and there's no war going on, and looks at that supply chain issue and 350 ships stuck out Shanghai, and the war's over, it'll all be fine. Given that list, I think most people sit there and say, can I pass on this one for the moment, please? So we need that confidence. And that means, again, that focusing on redirecting capital to where it's needed, which is in the regions, not in London. There is no shortage of money to invest here. It needs to make sure you've got the right plumbing in place to get it out. Encouraging entrepreneurs out there to be able to set up, and they do need courage. It's a very brave thing to put your life on the line, your family on the line to set that business up, and to be able to make sure they've got a business which can manage through difficult times. Sadly, I go back to the 70s and remember watching my father with his fixed pension, with inflation 1 year at 25%. 25%. You're never going to get that back. That's gone forever. And, so he wasn't poor, but after that, he was considerably poorer. His lifestyle had to change.
Justin, thank you so much for joining us, as always. Thank you.
Now, comedian Ricky Gervais has caused controversy with his latest stand-up show, Supernature, which has been labelled dangerous, anti-gay, anti-trans by US LGBT rights groups.
The 60-year-old comedian, regarded as one of Britain's funniest men, said that most offence comes from when people mistake the subject of a joke with the actual target. Here he is trying to explain about the way he uses humour.
Welcome to my show. It's not a show. There's no dancers or jugglers. It's basically a bloke talking, which is essentially what stand-up comedy is, isn't it? A bloke talking. Sexist. What about all the funny female comedians? Like, No. Right. No. I'm not doing that. OK, right. That was irony, OK? There's going to be a bit of that throughout the show. See if you can spot it, OK? Now, that's when I say something I don't really mean for comic effect, and you as an audience, you laugh at the wrong thing because you know what the right thing is. It's a way of satirising attitudes. Like that first joke, I used the old-fashioned sexist trope that women aren't funny. Now, in real life, I know there are loads of funny women. Like, I did it again. Well spotted. Good.
Well, joining us now to discuss whether Wreckage of Aids should be cancelled or not is actor and comedian Josh Howie. Funny or not?
Yeah, it's funny. Funny, of course it's funny. He's funny, he's successful, he's a comedian. And for the people who say he's not funny as a definitive statement, what they actually mean is, I don't find him funny. And there's a massive difference there. Comedy is subjective. He's, you know, it's probably at top of the charts of Netflix. He's going to get paid millions of pounds to make another one. And the jokes are funny.
But are they offensive?
Well, I mean, the biggest furore of that particular special is the stuff that's about trans. But this is the thing: the actual victims of that joke, such as they are, is actually trans rights activists, not trans people, and that seems to be the big mistake that people are making. He is literally quoting trans rights activists and their toxicity and their abuse back at them. They don't like that, thus they're offended.
I think if people don't like something, they shouldn't go and watch it. Is probably my solution. And to be honest, I'm offended by all these people who always get offended. They offend me, to be honest. I just wondered though whether if there's any subject that should be out of bounds for comedians. Should comedy have a complete free rein?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, your responsibility as a comic is to make people laugh. You can talk about any subject you want, but it's all going to be about the context, what you're actually saying with it. This whole stuff of like punching up, punching down is a ridiculous way of trying to frame what comedy is. First of all, am I making people laugh? It doesn't have to be, or most of these aren't actually full of hate or about hatred at all. There are ways of talking about any different controversial subject and bringing a different understanding to it. Does that mean that you should just go out there and say, I hate this person, I hate that person? No, that's not funny. But comedy is a great tool to use people, to use to be able to get people to reflect on difficult subject matter from a different perspective. By the way, I should say, I'm a comic, but there's nothing unfunnier than talking about comedy.
Do you ever worry about what you're going to say, whether or not somebody's going to take offence when you go and perform? Or do you even have venues that tell you, you know, you can only perform here as long as you don't talk about these subjects?
Well, I would never, if someone ever told me, like, tried to censor me that way, for me, that goes against what comedy is about. And I would just go, no, I'll see you later. There's no point me being here. Certainly with what I do, which is, if people think that what Ricky Gervais is doing offensive, then I suggest they please don't come and see what I do. But it's never about trying to offend. I'm not trying to upset people. All I'm really trying to do is make people laugh and make them think about certain issues in a slightly different way. Are some people going to get offended by that? Yes, but usually, frankly, they're quite stupid.
Josh Howie, thank you very much indeed. And all I will say to you and every comedian out there, most of the public were saying, thank the Lord that they are tackling these subjects that we don't feel we can talk about, and they're tackling it, and they're being the sort of the vanguard of just conversation and talking points. They see the blinding obvious, and they think we can't say anything. Thank goodness for those comedians who are saving free speech.
I mean, it always seems to me that the people who get offended are always the sort of white, middle-class, Guardian-reading, sandal-wearing, lentil-eating do-gooders with too much time on their hands and some kind of misguided guilt complex, getting offended always on somebody else's behalf. And I just think, if you don't like Ricky Gervais, I thought that was hilarious. If you don't like Ricky Gervais, don't go and watch him. Don't switch it on. Why on earth would you switch something on when you know you're going to be offended by it?
Do you agree with Philip? Email in, let us know. So this coming up after the break, we're going to be joined by the Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, that's George Eustice. So don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation. We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents. Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was, in fact, a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to the show. Next, we're going to be speaking to the Environment Secretary about gene editing of food.
Now, this was one of the biggest stories of the week that received hardly any coverage in the mainstream media, or if they did, they just talked about Frankenstein food. But how food is grown and produced and labelled could be like one of the very biggest changes that's coming with our way. Now, I know it's about coping with food scarcity around the world. I know it's about the cost of living and how to reduce the price of things and also reduce chemical pesticides. But I've always been against genetically modified food. Now, Philip, you've always said it's about logic and not emotion. He's been for that. However, and this is where I can take a deep breath and I'm prepared to listen to what's coming next. This is about genetically edited food, very different, and the two really shouldn't be confused. So I want to welcome George Eustice and ask him, because this is the debate, what is gene-edited food?
Well, thank you, Esther, and a real pleasure to be here. The key difference is that genetically modified food, which has been, somewhat controversial since it was introduced about 20 or 30 years ago, in that you remove genes from one species and take them across species boundaries to another in a way that could never occur in the natural environment. And that's what makes that controversial. And that's why we'll be keeping in place a very rigorous assessment process for that type of genetic modification. But gene editing is very different. It simply means taking a trait that might be in, say, one species of wheat and transferring it into a different species of wheat. And that's the sort of thing that we've done through plant breeding down the centuries. And indeed, we've used ways to sort of cause gene mutations since the Second World War. And there are processes like F1 hybrid approaches to crop breeding that actually just refine the precision with which we can move traits or keep traits within a particular crop. And that's all gene editing is. It's an extension of that traditional plant breeding, but doing it using modern technology in a very, very precise way. So we can get the benefits of reduced pesticide use, better drought resistance, lower needs for chemical fertilizers to be applied by using this technology. And that's why it's going to be so important for the future.
And that's why I'm, prepared to go along with this. I do see the difference. And I think, it's good that you've come on the programme today to start explaining this. But what I would also like to see, and this is probably the bit that's going to be a bit controversial, and to be honest, you and me could fall out over this. And that's why is about the labelling, because I believe there should always be labelling so you know what's going on. So I can follow the gene editing and I see the difference between sort of genetic modification. But what about the labelling so people know what they're eating? Because all of the things you're talking about are good things that you can change with this editing.
Well, the important thing to realise that although in the European Union very few crops are cultivated that are genetically modified or gene edited, it's around about a third of all animal feeds sold right across Europe, including here in the UK, are actually from, genetically modified crops, let alone gene edited crops. And that, meat is not labelled as such. And that's because there's, when it comes to labelling, the crucial thing is the question whether the product is safe. And so while we're not going to have labelling for crops produced in this way, for the simple practical reason that you might have in a loaf of bread grain that comes from several different farms. Some of it might be different varieties. Some of it could be as a result of genetic editing. Some of it might be through other breeding techniques. And so to label that loaf of bread would be a very difficult thing to do. But we are going to ensure that all of these seeds, before they get a marketing authorization to be grown, also go through an assessment by the Food Standards Agency for Health. And we don't envisage there being any problems because, as I said, these could be a natural breeding technique, but there's that extra safeguard, if you like, which is a health assessment before anything could reach the market at all.
OK, well, I'm prepared to listen, but I on that one, I'll probably still need to be convinced. But what I am convinced about is the fact that this could definitely be a Brexit dividend. This is about the UK now being at the forefront of sort of the agricultural industry. And I know we're very good at tech food.
Well, that's right. And so just to understand what happened here, there are countries across Europe that are quite sceptical about genetically modified food in the way the EU are. But all countries, including ones like Germany and France, who have been the most sceptical, always wanted to embrace gene editing as a technology because they could see that was going to be really important for the future, particularly when we want to reduce pesticides. But then what happened is in 2018, rather surprisingly, the European Court of Justice issued a judgment that simply said gene-edited crops should be treated as if they were genetically modified, even though they weren't. And the reason they did that is they spent hours trawling through hundreds of pages of legal text from the European Union, and it was a legal judgment rather than a scientific judgment. So what we're now free to do is to take scientific judgments based on the scientific realities and the scientific advice, rather than just based on what some clause that was badly drafted in a previous EU document said. And that's what's different now. And the European Union themselves also recognise that this is a problem, so they're going to be several years behind us, but they're also trying to address this problem that was created by the European Court of Justice.
George Eustace, thank you very much indeed for coming on. I know we'll come back to this because this is just the start of the process. This is just the start of the change of food and food processing. But earlier what were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say I'm pleased that we're starting this debate because when I worked for Asda 20 years ago, we had genetically modified food on the, and we knew it was safe. We knew there was no problem with it. People used to write in and complain, and we used to say it's safe. And we got so many complaints about it, we just decided to get rid of all genetically modified food. And I hope
the customers didn't want it.
Because I hope the same thing doesn't happen here. So I think it's really important we get this debate going so people know the facts.
And what it can prevent OK, earlier this week, Marks & Spencer's confirmed it was to close 32 stores in town centres after a shift in consumer behaviour.
The company said the decision was made because the locations have lost impetus due to numerous factors, including Brexit, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and an increase in online shopping due to the pandemic.
It also reported the chain plans to move stores from the high street onto the edge of towns, and that is because of the cost of car parking, the lack of car parking.
Well, joining us now to discuss the situation is Chair of the Federation of Small Business, Retail and High Streets Policy Unit, Michael Whedon. Michael, what do you make of this? How damaging will it be to the high street that a big name like M&S is sort of moving lots of its stores out?
It's a continuation of a story which has been going on for some years. We've seen large chains have been moving out of high streets, whereas actually small businesses have been maintaining the levels in which they operate. For those 32 town centres, though, it's going to be bad news, because one of the key things which a town centre needs, and all the businesses there, is footfall. Now, footfall has been depressed, particularly over the last couple of years, has been coming back a bit, but it's still, town centre footfall is still below where it was before the pandemic. So taking large shops where people might have gone, and when you go to a town, you go there, you do a number of things. You might go to Marks & Spencer's, you might get a haircut, have a coffee, do some other things. It's that aggregate demand which is there to do lots of things in one place. It takes a big chunk out of it. We've seen it before. I know other towns where Marks & Spencer's have moved out, and they have in fact gone to operate on, the edges of towns as well. You can see the attraction for them. Out of town rents are cheaper, so rates are cheaper. Parking is free. From their point of view, you can see why they might want to do it. But the damage will be elsewhere.
Michael, can we just focus on that point for a bit, because there's a point about parking, and that was one of the factors involved. The fact that the high car parking charges for customers in town centres, not enough parking spaces. Short stay, you stay for a limited amount of time before you've got to move on. How damaging do you think this sort of anti-motorist policy that many local authorities seem to have is? How damaging is that to the high street?
Local authorities have a very difficult balancing act to carry out. They are required to look at clean air issues and so forth. There are demands for many people for, a reduction in the amount of traffic. But the problem is, if people don't get to the town centres, they don't go, they do the shopping, they don't get the haircuts, they don't drink the coffee. So it is very difficult for this to be balanced. I've said some years ago that I could see that the sort of environmental story would crash head on in the middle of the high street with our high streets issue as well. Millions of people are concerned about the high streets. They hate it when they see shops being empty. They hate seeing low footfall, yet councils have to try and achieve a balance. Now, one of the interesting things is we're now approaching the devolution deals for levelling up, and some of that money might go into this kind of area.
Well, let's hope so, Michael Whedon, because we're going to have to say goodbye now. So let's hope, on your final note there, that's where that money's going to go. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Now, over in the United States, the jury for the defamation trial between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard has been sent out to consider its verdict.
For those of you not in the know, Heard is being sued by her ex-husband Depp for $50 million over an article she wrote in 2018 in which she described herself as a public figure representing domestic abuse.
The 36-year-old actress has countersued for $100 million after his lawyer called her allegations a hoax.
Well, joining us now in the studio to talk about the case is lawyer and broadcaster and friend of the show, Andrew Eborn.
I love being a friend of the show.
Well,
Come on.
You certainly are. So all the showbiz names there. Kate Moss was there this week, pulling all of the showbiz names out. But really, we're wanting to look at the law here and what's going on. The jury now have got to deliberate. So we've heard all that is going to be said. Where does this case take us?
Well, if Agatha Christie is the greatest British drama since The Crown, then undoubtedly...
And that's between Colleen.
That's between Colleen and Vardy, and the decision will be coming in the next few days, and we'll talk about that. This has to be the Hollywood blockbuster, because, as you say, the case from Johnny Depp against Amber Heard, he is suing her for $50 million. It's to do with an opinion piece she wrote in December 2018 in The Washington Post, Post, where she was basically saying she's the public figure representing domestic abuse. And she didn't mention Johnny by name at all. But what the case is basically because it was the timing of it. And Johnny sort of said, well, hang about, my whole career has been devastated as a result of it. And you can compare the two cases, because it's different in the US to what it is over here. It's a jury trial, so there are going to be 7 members of the jury have to decide who's telling the truth. Amber, as you said in your brilliant opening, is countersuing for 100 million because she turns around and says, hang on, you're calling me a liar and that's not fair, and so on and so forth. So what the jury has to decide was, first of all, who's telling the truth, because that's the biggest defence for defamation. They also need to, the case is being taken in Fairfax. And people say, well, why on earth is it in Fairfax? Why not in Hollywood, and so on and so forth? And the reason for that is the Washington Post servers are in Fairfax. So it raises all sorts of questions there. There was also another question you need to work out, is why is this case being heard again, in the sense? Isn't this a sense of déjà vu? And you're right, there was a case heard in the UK not so long ago. In fact, in Sunday, the 27th of April, 2018, executive editor of the News Group newspapers, a certain Dan Wootton, I don't know if you've heard of him. You might have heard of him. He had this wonderful headline called Gone Potty, How Can J.K. Rowling Be Genuinely Happy Casting Wife-Beater Johnny Depp in a new Fantastic Beast film? So that led to a defamation action by Johnny against the newspaper group and also that sort of side.
But just quickly, what I'm interested in is what the jury have to decide, because there's a couple of points here, and I'm wondering, can anybody win? Could they both be losers? So what have the jury got to decide, and what will that mean to
Well,
both
the first thing they have to
Depp and
decide, break it down, they have to decide, is it a defamatory statement? So being a wife-beater would be a defamatory statement. Amber has to say calling her a liar would be a defamatory statement.
Yeah.
They have to work out what is the damages as a result of that. But also, is there a defence? And the biggest defence in defamation is the truth. If you're telling the truth on that sort of basis, you can say. So they talk about the First Amendment, you're allowed to freedom of speech, but there are no freedom from consequences, and that's the key.
And what do you think is going to happen? Is Depp going to be
let
let off? Who's going to win?
I'll tell you exactly who's going to win. It's the lawyers, as always. And I think that's the problem. And I also think both of them, their careers are really jeopardised as a result of this action. It is the worst, most dangerous, ill-advised libel action since Oscar Wilde.
You've been impressed with the Johnny Depp's lawyer, haven't you? Camille Vasquez. She's made her reputation on this, so...
In the magazine this year, they said, a woman to watch, and I thought, haven't we all been?
Andrew, thank you very much indeed for keeping us up to speed. Coming up in the next hour of the show, we're joined by the lead singer of a band who have recorded their album in various prisons across the UK.
We're also joined by royal experts to look forward to the Jubilee weekend.
And keep those views coming in. We'd love to hear from you, so email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews. See you soon.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation. We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was, in fact, a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning with Esther and Philip. Coming up this hour, we're looking ahead to the Jubilee weekend, and we'll also be joined by the lead singer of a band who have just finished a very unique tour.
All of that and much more after your latest headlines with Olivia.
Thank you. Good morning. It's 11 o'clock. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. Former US President Donald Trump has told a pro-gun convention America should prioritise funding for school security over aid to Ukraine. The summit was held just days after the murder of 19 children and 2 adults in a primary school in Texas. Hundreds of protesters are demonstrating outside the National Rifle Association meeting in the state. Mr. Trump rejected calls for gun control and says instead there should be a top-to-bottom overhaul of school security.
There should be strong exterior fencing, metal detectors, and the use of new technology to make sure that no unauthorized individual can ever enter the school with a weapon. No one should ever be able to get anywhere near a classroom until they have been checked, scanned, screened, and fully approved.
Meanwhile, there's growing anger towards the police over their response to the attack. Survivors, including children, were calling emergency services for help from the classroom long after 18-year-old Salvador Ramos had entered with a semi-automatic rifle. Police officers were in the hallway outside, waiting for more assistance. Colonel Stephen McCraw, director of the Texas Department of Public Safety, says officers should have acted sooner.
Hey, from the benefit of hindsight, where I'm sitting now, of course it was not the right decision. It was the wrong decision, period. There's no excuse for that. But again, I wasn't there, but I'm just telling you, from what we know, we believe there should have been an entry at that as soon as you can.
Ukraine's military says its soldiers may need to retreat from their last stronghold in the east of the country to avoid being captured. Officials say Russian troops have entered the Luhansk region, but their attacks are being repelled so far. Moscow has sent thousands of troops into the region, attacking from 3 sides in an attempt to encircle Ukrainian forces holding out in the city of Severodonetsk. It's as the Russian Defense Ministry claims it successfully tested a Zircon hypersonic. The missile was fired from the Barents Sea and hit a target in the White Sea. President Putin described the Zircon as part of a new generation of unrivaled arms systems. The UN says a record 220 million people may go hungry because of the conflict in Ukraine. An official says 6 million tonnes of grain and almost 14 million tonnes of corn are blocked in Ukrainian ports. Rising costs of food and fertiliser are threatening global food security. The number of people in the world suffering malnutrition was on the rise even before the conflict. It reached almost 200 million in 53 countries last year. Football fans are welcoming the news that the sale of Chelsea Football Club will go ahead. Chelsea Supporters Trust have issued a statement congratulating the consortium led by Todd Boy on its successful takeover bid. Chelsea was put up for sale in March when owner Roman Abramovich was sanctioned for his links to President Putin. It's expected the deal will be completed on Monday. Boris Johnson's been accused of misleading Parliament by one of his own MPs, as the number of Tories calling for him to resign over Number 10 lockdown parties continues to grow. Veteran Conservative MP Sir Bob Neill and 2019 entrant Alicia Cairns both voiced concerns with the Prime Minister's insistence that he had not broken coronavirus rules by attending leaving dues for departing officials. Sir Bob Neill has also submitted his letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister to the influential 1922 committee. Thousands of people are gathering in Belfast today to celebrate the centenary of the creation of Northern Ireland. There are speeches outside Stormont this morning with a parade into Belfast city centre. There were plans to celebrate 100 years since partition last year, but events had to be postponed because of the pandemic. EasyJet says it's cancelling around 2,400 flights over the next 10 days from Gatwick, starting from today. The airline says the move isn't connected to the IT issues they were experiencing earlier this week. They apologise for the cancellations, but say they're necessary to provide reliable services over the busy half-term break. And the stakes are high as 60,000 Liverpool fans travel to Paris for tonight's Champions League final clash with Real Madrid. The Reds will take on the Spanish champions at the Stade de France. However, fears were raised about the pitch after it emerged it was only laid on Thursday because of the late allocation of the game in February. The final was originally meant to be held in St. Petersburg, but it was moved to Paris after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now it's back to Esther and Philip.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning with Esther and Philip. Coming up this hour.
We're looking ahead to the Jubilee weekend and discussing what will be going through the minds of some members of the royal family as we approach the big day.
We will also be joined by the lead singer of a band who has just finished touring in prisons across the UK. We'll be chatting to him about that unique experience.
And tonight is the night Liverpool fans have been waiting for. They take on Real Madrid, in the Champions League final over in Paris. We'll be joined by sports broadcaster Aidan McGee in the studio to look ahead to the game.
And loads of you have been getting in touch already. We want more. So if you want to get involved with the conversation, then you know what to do. You need to email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk or you can tweet us at gbnews. Well, before that... Before all that, though, yes, we're joined again by Frank McKenna in the studio. Frank.
Hi, Esther.
Back again, and of course you run a really big business group, 100,000 sort of businesses all subscribed to what you do. So I'm wondering what they might have thought, because obviously parliaments and parliamentarians are always trying to engage with the public. And here we've got Nadine Dorries trying to reach out to a young audience about the online harms bill, and she's done this rap on TikTok.
The UK is passing some new legislation to make the internet safer for the younger generation. It's effectively a framework to protect internet users from scams, illegal content and anonymous abusers. It will force big tech to stop their terms being breached and puts in measures to defend free speech. But is it true it will impact freedom of expression? No, we put in legal protections in the 19th section. Another thing we're doing through the laws we're passing is tackling online crime and cyber flashing. If companies fail to comply with the law, fail to protect the users that they're responsible for, the regulator Ofcom will have the power to fine. So platforms must keep people safe online.
No, we didn't see that. I'm scarred for life. I cannot unsee that. You shouldn't see. Although we watched the video there, you really should have watched the faces of us here. Frank, your face was a picture. I think it was shocked.
It's the first time I've seen that. And
the last time you're going to see it?
Hopefully. But if this is supposed to be combating online harm, I have to say, that's known as legal quite but offensive.
Harmful. That's legal but harmful, that is.
I wonder who advises ministers to do something like that. Because, joking aside, I mean, that is horrific, isn't it?
just to step in for Nadine here, because nobody else seems anxious to, is that not a good way to communicate to young people in this day and age? I mean, it might not be sort of the most polished performance you've ever seen, but will it not maybe engage with people about the message that otherwise may never know anything about this?
Philip, it's a very manful defence of something that's indefensible. I honestly can't see how that is going to raise awareness of what are really serious issues. In fact, you could go as far as to say it's actually undermining the campaign, because it's a bit of a joke, that. Yeah. It doesn't come across well at all. And I'm not having to go particularly at her, because, as I say, there's lots of people paid around the communications piece for government who should have been saying, actually, Minister, having reflected on your performance, we think we may have to find a better way.
Or you do it in a serious way that befits your status, and what we'll do is maybe get a young pop group or somebody in who is interested in online harm and get them to do it.
Well, I think you're both being harsh. Anyway, Frank, what caught your eye?
Well, working from home is something that we've discussed before, actually, and interesting in the Mail this morning, hell of the work from home civil services phone lines. Callers routinely put on hold for an hour. That's if they're lucky. 20 hours to confirm tax payments, all sorts of statistics. But the drive here, really, I think, is to look at how we need to rebalance our work ethic and our culture within the workplace, because I think Elon Musk said earlier this week that he's looking forward to companies going bust who've not taken the opportunity to get back into the office. I wouldn't go that far, but I do think that when you look at people having passport delays, my wife had to cancel a holiday recently. She wasn't best pleased, and that obviously, as you can imagine, Philip, impacted on me.
I can sympathise.
I hope you didn't lose the passport, Frank.
No, absolutely. No, yeah. She applied in good time ordinarily, but obviously the delays that are happening at the moment. We've also got issues around driving licences. But if you take this back just to the work from home piece, I keep banging on about this, and I'll continue to. Matters massively for people to get back into offices, for their own mental health, for the creativity that working within an office environment brings, but also for productivity. And people say to me, well, you can work as productively at home. Well, actually, you can't. Where's the motivation? How are you fitting in with the culture of your business? And how do you make mates? Simple things like that. So for me, driving people back into offices is not Luddite. It's actually trying to get our economy back moving in the right direction, but also good for individuals as well.
And you're right, Elon Musk, I know he's outspoken, he's always on his Twitter account, and he usually says things in somewhat stark terms, and he certainly did about businesses and people working from home. You need to be there working hard, be competitive, because otherwise, for him, you're not the person for the job. Phil, what have you done?
No, well, the thing I wanted to focus on was the front page of The Guardian. The headline is, Furious PM changes code of conduct to save his skin. Now, the reason I want to flag this up, I often say to lots of people, particularly my constituents, that, not to believe everything you read in the papers, and actually, better still, don't believe anything you read in the papers. And I don't think I've seen a better example ever than this particular headline in The Guardian, which is basically alleging that he's changed the ministerial code of conduct to save his skin because he's being investigated by the Privileges Committee. And actually, this is completely untrue. What's in the Guardian? The changes that the Prime Minister's made to the Code of Conduct was actually about saying that, well, not everybody who breaks the ministerial code has to necessarily resign. That's always been the case. Baroness Varzi broke the ministerial code in 2012, and David Cameron just accepted her apology. And it was actually the Committee of Standards in Public Life who asked the Prime Minister to actually make this explicit in the code. He's actually doing what they asked him to do. And it doesn't save his own skin, because it actually says in this new code that any minister who is found to knowingly mislead Parliament must still resign. And that's what he's being investigated for by the Privileges Committee. So virtually there's nothing in that headline that is actually true. And people like the Institute for Government have been valiantly trying to make the case that actually there's actually nothing to see here. But look, the point is, there's many, many things to criticise the Prime Minister for. I criticise him for lots of things.
On a daily basis.
And he knows all the things I criticise him for. But can we at least please not make things up to criticise him for? Let's stick to what's accurate and factual. And it's just another very good example of why you should not believe everything you read in the papers.
I think what it is as well, Phil, you're always been focused on sort of policy and process and how things work, and it is a complicated space, particularly parliamentary process. So maybe it's a case of a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. All the journalists are quickly trying to write something up, and they don't actually know the past precedents. They don't actually know what happens in the House, and hence we're getting sort of these headlines. Or is it a bit more sinister? I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that they don't necessarily... Or is it, you know what, everybody's made up their decision, journalists and otherwise, time for Boris to go? Is that what this is now? Is this everybody in one way or another taking a pop where they can at the Prime Minister?
I think the optics and the timing were perhaps wrong to make the announcement because I saw the headlines and thought immediately he's trying to find ways out of what's coming down the tracks when he does have to appear between the Privilege Committee. Having read the detail, you're absolutely right, Philip, it actually doesn't undermine the ethics code. Some people could argue actually it strengthens it. But as I say, I do wonder about the timing of the announcement and whether or not, you know, the immediate... And this is a problem now, isn't it, for Boris Johnson moving forward, whether everybody's immediate reaction to almost anything he announces now is, well, what's he trying to do here? What's he trying to deflect attention away from? I think that's a problem for him, and I think it's a problem for the government moving forward as well.
Have you got another story there, Frank?
Yeah, I was just, again, we're talking about passports, and listen, if you've got a passport, great. Good on you.
Like gold
but listen, Victoria, this could have been you. Holiday hell, and it's going to get
worse. Did you call me Victoria then?
No,
yeah, my missus.
Yeah, so Victoria. I thought you were saying to me, I was going to say, you're mistaken me with your wife.
I'm hoping she's watching, and I'm saying, you know, given the stick that we all got because she didn't get her passport. So we've got staffing shortages, computers failures, leaving 30,000 passengers stranded with many queuing for hours, an estimated 100,000 jobs unfilled at airports, and Heathrow alone, 10,000 workers short. You know, on a serious note, this is a huge challenge for the country.
Yeah.
And again, when we talk about the masses of financial support that was given to individuals, that were given to people through lockdowns and so on, one of the industry sectors that I think was omitted in terms of those support packages was aviation. And I think it's something that we will have to start to look at. I'm not sure what the answers, what the solutions are, but clearly, if these sort of statistics and these sort of problems continue, then it's going to be a massive difficulty for the country and for holidaymakers moving forward.
So even if you get a passport, you still can't guarantee...
You can't get on the plane.
You still can't guarantee you're going to get your holiday. It's, you know...
Always the bringer of good news there, Phil. Frank McKenna, thank you very much indeed, founder of Downtown in Liverpool. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say good luck Real Madrid tonight.
That is such a poor Evertonian. Or a bitter blue there.
Bitter blue.
My dad is on the plane. He's on his way out there to see the game. I have to tell you this, Frank. This is what he said. He texted me. He said, Est, I'm getting on the plane. He said, do us a favour. Will you tape the show? Love it, Dad.
Well, he won't want to watch that bit of it, will he?
Oh, we've got that as evidence now. Taped forever. Anyway, the Jubilee weekend is approaching, and it's going to be a time of celebration for us here in the UK and indeed around the world. But what will be going through the minds of members of the royal family as the build-up continues?
To discuss this with us, and indeed the royal family as a whole, is celebrity psychologist and royal expert Dr. Arthur Cassidy. Arthur, thank you very much for...
Good morning, Philip and Esther. Good morning to you.
Thank you for joining us. Obviously, this is a massive weekend, coming up, a culmination of 70 years of the Queen's public service. How will the Queen be feeling? Will she be feeling this as a great celebration, or will she be approaching it with some trepidation, given all the headlines about Harry, Meghan and Andrew?
Well, we have to remember that the Queen is a very highly private person psychologically, and she doesn't normally reveal her public feelings or emotions in public. We do know that. However, the Queen, this is her Jubilee, and the Queen will want to conform. It's a time for enjoyment for the public. She will want to really, she's in touch with the nation, and she wants to enjoy. That's why she's wearing Balmoral at the moment. She really wants to enjoy the celebrations, and especially what will be very important to her will be the service of Thanksgiving at St. Paul's Cathedral. So she's a very emotional person, like any other human being. She's still grieving from the loss of her dear husband, Prince Philip. But the Queen is still one who will conform. She wants the nation to enjoy the many, many, many years and decades she's had on the throne. So yes, she will want to enjoy the celebration and throw herself right into the middle of it all.
Mm-hmm. And she also, as head of the family, is making sure that Harry and Meghan behave themselves. They're meant to be supposedly behaving themselves and not doing any stunts. Do you think they can live up to that?
Well, there are many issues here surrounding this proposed visit of Harry and Meghan. And I've just been reading many of the tabloids and broadsheets the past few days, and it seems to be that it indicates that possibly that Meghan will do a runner maybe. And if she feels that there are going to be snide remarks made, if she feels that they're going to be marginalised, she said and alleges that she's going to do a bump, that she will move out. Now, that would be very ungracious, because this is the Queen's Jubilee celebrations. It is a place where Meghan will have to conform as a member of the royal family. She's not noted for conformity. The only person she informs us, by the way, in recent media reports, is she will only courtesy to the Queen. She will not go along and conform to royal protocol or comply to that. Now, that is not what we expect from this. And I would have expected that Prince Harry would have taken the role here and would have said, look, I'm your husband. Do what I tell you. You are married into the royal family. Remember, what would Diana have expected of you under the circumstances? So there it is. And by the way, they have generated quite a lot of hostility from the public attitudes. And I note here that they've dropped right down the scale from 81% are saying here at the moment, no more public money. They should not be funded. And also, the 3 out of 5 are saying, look, lose your titles or stop using them.
I just wondered I'm hoping the focus is going to be on the Queen and not on Meghan and Harry. It's the least she deserves after all the years of service that she's done. I just wondered what you thought that she'd be looking forward to most next weekend. We've got the Trooping of the Colour on Thursday. We've got the service of Thanksgiving on the Friday. We've got the Jubilee pageant and Jubilee lunch on the Sunday. But my money, Arthur, is that the thing she's most looking forward to is next Saturday and the Epsom Derby. What do you think she's looking forward to most?
Right. She is, and you know that, and I know that. She really is. She cannot wait to get to the Epsom Derby, by the way, because she's a country woman at heart. She is a member of the aristocracy. She's happy in the country. She did say, by the way, many, many years ago, I would prefer to have been a farmer. And I think, the Queen really is at home with her horses and dogs in the countryside. She loves Balmoral. She loves the rural life. But she is, remember, would you really like to lead the life of the monarch or in royal family? It's a source of entrapment. You cannot be yourself. So we have to be mindful of the psychological aspects of being the monarch, or indeed being in the high-profile situation which they encounter day by day with exposure to media. And so this is not an easy thing for anyone to accommodate. But yes, she will throw herself right into these celebrations. I actually did like the actual little golf boogie that she had. I thought this was an amazing feature. She looked so happy in it, and I did see the Queen out on the golf course in this, by the way. But anyway, everything's falling into place. However, we have to be mindful of her emotions, and that's the bottom line.
And we will be mindful of emotions, and somebody else's emotions maybe Meghan should have been mindful of, and that was her father's. Do you know what's happened here? Has she visited him? Have Harry visited him? Have they any intention of catching up with him, him being so ill?
Sorry. The reality is we actually don't know. And I've been thinking about this and reflecting on this, speaking to a few other journalists during the week. What has happened here is we don't know whether she is proposing to go She should have gone, by the way, because I deal with my other professional work. I'm dealing with people from the celebrity world to the non-celebrity world who also have encountered estrangement from families. Now, very often we have to say, okay, put it aside. Many will not put it aside. This is down to core personality characteristics. Now, Meghan would know, she's a very intelligent woman, and she will know that the father's had a very major stroke. And following stroke victims, we often do get post-stroke depression. We get post-stroke health anxiety rising and increasing. There will be a year of speech therapy and possibly occupational therapy. And this is a time when Meghan should be honouring and respecting her father and being at his bedside, and then also to come and do the gestures to the family.
Dr. Arthur Cassidy, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. Thank you.
Coming up after the break, we're joined in the studio by the lead singer of a band who have just finished a prison tour around the UK. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation. We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
Welcome back to the show. Hardwick Circus have produced an album that will, according to them, forever align themselves with the disenfranchised.
The five-piece band recorded their brand new album, At Her Majesty's Pleasure, in prison chapels and performed their songs at 11 prisons across the United Kingdom.
Well, to tell us more about the experience and the thought process behind such a unique album is the band's lead singer, Johnny Foster. Johnny, thank you for joining us.
How are you?
Why prisons?
Well, none of us Hardwicks have ever been to jail before.
And before COVID, we played at Rochester Nick, where we did 45 minutes and then a Q&A session with the inmates. And it was such a rewarding, emotional, kind of religious experience that we figured, getting out after COVID with very few music venues available to play at, let's get back in jail and organise a 15-day prison tour.
We were being a bit cruel, weren't we? Say it's a captive audience. They've got to listen to you. There's nothing else they can
Absolutely.
do. But what I want to say is, you know, how do you go past all of the red tape? I mean, how do you get into prisons? Great to have the idea, but how do you get in?
Well, I think, you know, there's some good initiatives going to help kind of re-educate and get prisoners and inmates involved with the arts. There's some great people, Debbie Leachy and Whittle at the prisons. Rory Stewart put a word in. He was very. He helped direct us a little, and so did James.
Was that recently? Was that recently?
Oh, this was when he was
ago?
when he was
when he was there.
Minister.
Okay, so this is quite a while ago. Yeah.
Absolutely, and James Timpson from Timpson's, the great British establishment.
So what do you think you're going to do when you go in there? I mean, are these hardened criminals, or are these the people who are about to come out, have spent a long time in prison, and what do you think you're doing? I mean, how do you connect with them?
Well, these are citizens just like us. Everyone's deserving of live music. I firmly believe that. You know, we sing songs of, you know, overcoming adversity, tales from being on the road, from being in a small northern town, from Carlisle. And when you sing these songs in the prison walls, they resonate. The words take on a new meaning. The music has a certain effect. And you can see a real two-way connection between us as the band and them as the inmates who don't get a lot in the way of art and culture, which I think should be at the heart of education and it should be fundamental in anyone's life.
Now, some people will say, well, look, you know, I mean, obviously Johnny Cash appeared in prisons.
Yes.
He was very famous for that, but it was just, some people would say, well, look, hold on a minute. These people they've committed crimes.
Yes.
There's been a victim of the crime there. Why should they get this treat when they're supposed to be being punished for it?
Yes.
What do you say to those people?
Well, I think prison has to be more about locking people behind cell doors. It has to be about finding a route out of the jail and back into society. And I think at the heart of that should be education, and music is an absolutely perfect example of how you can, of relating with real-life topics, with developing new talents, with writing poetry, writing songs. It's all very useful, and I think it makes us on the outside world better people, and it can make people on the inside much better.
Has that convinced you?
Well, I don't know. I can, you know, I understand the point, but I still think that, you know, that prisons are becoming a bit too much like holiday camps and not enough about being punished for committing serious offences.
No, I don't think that's true at all. I think it's verging on drivel, actually, because, you know, these places are by no means party houses. Prisons are undervalued, underfunded, very disjointed, and, you know, we have to help our fellow citizens in finding a way back into society, and also it's rewarding for us, you know, we're connecting on a very human level, and I think when you go into prison and when you see that, you would recognise the real benefit there.
The only thing I'd say, Johnny, yes, you're live, and in a way that could touch them deeper than anything else, but, you know, otherwise they could be watching telly. So why is watching TV in something in a downtown any different than connecting with sort of live music? So in that regard, I see why you should be, or could be going in. But more about you. You've got an album coming out later in the year, and I have been listening to your music.
Yes.
And it does sound a little bit like the Madness and the Squeeze, and as it is, you've got their producers as well.
We are. Well, we're playing with Madness in Jubilation in Brockwell Park on Thursday. Very exciting. Their producer, Alan Winstanley, has recorded our new single with Chris Difford from Squeeze, which is released next Thursday, Friday the 3rd of June. So it's all very exciting. And as of yesterday, the Prison album was released, At Her Majesty's Pleasure. Yeah. So people can stream that on Spotify, Apple Music, and they can buy a physical version of it on CD on our website.
And another way round, have they inspired you? Have any songs come from the work you've done in prison?
Absolutely. I mean, when we play in prison, not only are we playing, we invite the inmates on stage. So
right. We'll leave it there. We'll leave that image in our head. Johnny Foster, lead singer. Thank you very much. Of Hardwick Castle.
Very good. Thank you. Good luck to me.
Coming up after the break, we're joined by our regular showbiz and sports reporters to go through the biggest stories from the week. But before that, here's the latest news with Olivia.
Thank you. It's 11:34. Here are the latest headlines in the GB newsroom. Former US President Donald Trump has told a pro-gun convention America should prioritise funding for school security over aid to Ukraine. The summit was held just days after the murder of 19 children and 2 adults in a primary school in Texas. Hundreds of protesters are demonstrating outside the National Rifle Association meeting in the state. Mr. Trump rejected calls for gun control and says instead there should be a top-to-bottom overhaul of school security.
There should be strong exterior fencing, metal detectors, and the use of new technology to make sure that no unauthorized individual can ever enter the school with a weapon. No one should ever be able to get anywhere near a classroom until they have been checked, scanned, screened, and fully approved.
Ukraine's military says its soldiers may need to retreat from their last stronghold in the east of the country to avoid being captured. Moscow's sent thousands of troops into the Luhansk region, attacking from 3 sides in an attempt to encircle Ukrainian forces holding out in the city of Severodonetsk. This comes as the Russian Ministry of Defense has claimed that it successfully tested a Zircon hypersonic missile. Football fans are welcoming the news that the sale of Chelsea Football Club will go ahead. The Chelsea Supporters Trust have issued a statement congratulating the consortium led by Todd Boy on its successful takeover bid. The club was put up for sale in March when the owner Roman Abramovich was sanctioned for his links to President Putin. It's expected the deal will be completed on Monday. EasyJet says it's cancelling over 200 flights over the next 10 days from Gatwick, starting from today. The airline says the move isn't connected to the IT issues they were experiencing earlier this week. They apologise for the cancellations, but say they're necessary to provide reliable services over the busy half-term break. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Don't go anywhere. Esther and Philip will be back in just a moment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation. We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. Lots of you have been getting in touch, Philip.
Peter says the Prime Minister has had a lot to cope with during his time in office and should be given a little slack as a result. However, he is failing those who voted for him by not being a Conservative Prime Minister. The Green Agenda, immigration, giving into the civil service by allowing people to work from home and create problems at the DVLA, Passport Office, probate et al, and not dealing with the woke agenda, BLM and Extinction Rebellion. He will lose the next election if he does not change these things.
Yeah, that was less of a comment, more of an essay. Glad you got that off your chest, Peter. I've got on the cost of living, Leslie says, it's not fair to means test the money for bills. It's never fair. Those perhaps who have never contributed to the Treasury would receive the money, but those who just fall below the level don't get any help or get much less help. And you've got to think about those people. Fair point, Leslie.
Mark says the only people who want to see Boris removed are the usual loudmouth socialists, a handful of Conservatives who think the media equates to public opinion and, by coincidence, Putin. Time to move on, as the alternative to Boris is so much worse.
Julian says, never mind the woke warriors out there. Most of the Labour Party cannot tell you what a woman is, including Starmer, Rachel Reeves, Rayner. That would put me off voting for them far more than any Partygate would.
And on Ricky Gervais, Hillary says, how sad that a comedian needs to explain humour. As to him being controversial, those who pay to see him know exactly what his type of humour is. Only those few who don't like his type of comedy don't need to listen nor watch. I, too, am offended by those few who feel offended.
And last one here, I'll say, Nick says, unlike comedy, protesters don't give me a choice. If only we had a choice to cancel and censor Extinction Rebellion protesters, life might just be a better place. But there's no choice on that one. I think he's got a fair point there, hasn't he?
I agree.
So, move away from your views there, but always keep them coming in. It's time to take a look at the week's showbiz news. And in the studio, we're joined by our regular showbiz correspondent, Hayley Palmer. So, Hayley, big news this week. Reforming of...
I know.
Avatars.
ABBA. Yeah, avatars. I like what you did there. This is the news that ABBA fans have all been waiting for, including myself. Just fabulous. And you're right, they used avatars to create themselves of how they were in the 1970s. So I think this is going to be a really unique way. You can see here, there they are on the red carpet. I mean, this was a star-studded red carpet. I wasn't invited. I don't know where my invitation went.
Oh, my word. It must be one of the few things you haven't been invited to.
I had an early night. No, I didn't really. But yes, there was Kylie there. There was Natalie Imbruglia. We had Penny Lancaster, the King and Queen of Sweden. So it was absolutely star-studded. So it really is the thing to see. It's open till Christmas. You can get your tickets. I think they're quite pricey, but I think it's worth it.
So are you a big ABBA fan?
Absolutely. My favourite song, Knowing Me, Knowing You.
Now,
Are you an ABBA fan?
Now, I'm going to be brutally honest with you.
Go.
I never was growing up. As a little kid, I have to tell you, they probably weren't trendy enough, I didn't think, for me. But as I've got older, and then I think, oh, my goodness, they've done another hit, they've done another hit. You know, hats off to them. And they always get everybody on the dance floor, don't they? Weddings, christenings, what have you. Yeah. But I think what is interesting, I was reading more the financial papers about this concept and about the avatars or avatars, and how many bands now will reform in that way. How much money is there to be made from people seeing their, I don't know, their rock idols in person? And they were saying, and not just reforming, but these could be playing in multiple venues at any one time because you're not there. So they were looking at how could this be a boost, having had COVID and lockdown, and you know lots of those performers didn't get any money. How could this be a boost for those performers in the music industry? And I thought, how interesting.
Yeah, I agree, because this had rave reviews. Couldn't wait to see what the reviews were like, because I was like, is it going to work? Is it not? But I think you're right. Now this has happened, it'll be interesting to see who else has this idea. And like you say, you can take it anywhere. So.
And you can reform it. Like Queen. I love Queen. Freddie Mercury can be back in Queen.
You see, the thing is, I love ABBA as well. I know I love ABBA. But the thing is, Esther always says I'm a contrarian. The one song of theirs I cannot abide is Dancing Queen, which is the one song that everybody always raves about and puts on. It's the one I can't...
And you know why? Because you're not good at dancing, or you're not a dancing queen.
I mean, you can't have everything, Philip. But did you know in the actual lineup, Super Trooper's not in there?
Really?
I was quite shocked by that, because that's a real classic, isn't it?
Yeah. Got to number one, I think, didn't it?
Yeah,
Super Trooper. Yeah, no. Anyway, thank you for pointing out that I'm not a very good dancer.
I've got the video evidence.
It is true. Now, we were also interested in Sean Connery and a famous painting.
Yes, it's been sold for 17.7 million.
It's his Picasso, or was his Picasso.
That's right, yes. And the money has gone to two charities, one in Scotland, one in the Bahamas, where he lived for over 30 years with his wife. So, yeah, apparently it kind of went in at 10 million, and then there were about 5 bids, and, you know, it's just incredible.
But how wonderful is that, that, you know, a celebrity has got, I know he's no longer with us, but he set up a foundation, and it was to help other people. He'd had a great life. He's collected all these wonderful things. He's no longer looking at that painting, and all of that money to go to charity. I thought that was...
Yeah, I mean, when he made Diamonds Are Forever, he donated his paycheck to the Scottish Nationalist Party then, so he's always done good
And he's
work
always
for
been
charity.
political,
Yeah, no, he has. No, but it is amazing, isn't it, to get all that money and give it away to charity.
yeah.
I thought that was terrific. And Peter Kay's making a comeback.
Oh, I love Peter
And we were
Kay.
talking about Ricky Gervais earlier, and we wondered if Peter Kay's going to go around upsetting people like Ricky Gervais.
Well, you know what? He's been off for a long time, Peter Kay, due to family problems. So it's brilliant to see him back. I'm a big car share fan. I'm all over that. So it's just nice when you see someone come back. You don't know what they've been through. And, you know, I know he's got a lot of fans. So, you know, bring it on.
Are you a Peter Kay fan?
Yes.
Yeah, brilliant. I think he's absolutely fantastic. I think he's fantastic too. Hayley, thank you so much for joining us. And
You've got the dancing.
Yeah.
Let's take him out this week and show him the moves. Together, we can show him
live
the
footage
moves.
next Saturday.
Two left feet I've got, but anyway, more humiliation. Now, former jockey Brian Toomey was clinically dead for 7 seconds after a fall, and was given just a 3% chance of survival after spending 157 nights in hospital.
7 years later, the 31-year-old says he wants to stop feeling sorry for himself and embark on a new journey to become a racehorse trainer.
Well, we're delighted to say that we're now joined by Brian to talk about his journey and what made him want to get involved in the world of horse racing again. Brian, it's an amazing story. If you don't mind, can you take us back to that day and tell us exactly what unfolded and how it happened?
Yeah, back to that day, I was looking forward to going to Perth. I was riding a favourite. I thought I had a very good chance of having a winner. And unfortunately, I didn't have the luck I was hoping for.
Can you remember anything about the incident, or does it sort of blacked out of your memory, or have you wanted to black it out of your memory?
Yeah, no, I can't remember anything about the incident, luckily. I can't even, my memory was beforehand even. I didn't remember much of my life beforehand. So, yeah, it was, no, it wasn't in my memory anyway, thankfully.
But it was a big accident. It took a long time to recover. You'll remember some of those things, though. I mean, just sort of being laid up in bed from somebody who's so active and liking to be out and about. How did you cope with that?
Yeah, that was very hard. And as a younger lad, obviously we put on a brave face. We let on that it's not affecting us, that we're okay, but it did. It was very, very hard and very difficult, but I didn't let on to anyone how I was coping with that or how hard it was, to be fair.
Now, I know the horse racing industry is a very close family, and I know you got lots of support at the time from people like the champion jockey, Brian Hughes, and everything. What I wondered is, I know you started riding out again. I just wondered how...
I'd never want to see a horse ever again, I have to be honest with you.
How did you feel? I suppose if you can't remember much about it, it probably helps. But how did you feel knowing what had happened the first time you got back on a horse again?
Well, obviously, I couldn't remember exactly what happened to me. I've seen pictures of it, and I don't remember. I was in hospital for 157 nights. I don't remember anything from being in hospital or from the surgery I had or from anything like that. I don't know. Getting back on a horse was obviously a bit of it wasn't a brave idea. It was quite a stupid idea, but it's always been my passion, and I couldn't leave it go. I couldn't. Obviously, I was lucky. I was able to walk again. I was mobile again. So it was a dream that I wanted to get back on a horse and get going again if I could.
And you want to become a racehorse trainer. Now, anybody who knows anything about horse racing knows that that's one of the most precarious professions in the country. So, you know, you must be a glutton for punishment, Brian, if you want to become a racehorse trainer. Why stick to horse racing after it's
after it's literally kicked you?
Exactly, after it's done so much harm to you. Why do you still want to stick in the industry?
As I said, it's my passion. I've been brought up with animals all my life. I was brought up in a farm in Ireland, it's as I said, it's my passion. It's all I know. I've done it all my life, and it's going to be very hard to get started, and obviously get the support and get the owners. Hopefully, we can have a GBNews syndicate. Maybe I think we could add a few of you in on that one. But as I say, it's always been my passion, and I'm very determined to achieve that if possible.
Brian, thank you for joining us. We wish you every success. I will certainly put around the office the idea of a GBNews syndicate to have a horse in training with you. I'm certainly up for that. I'll be doing the rounds, getting other people to sign up. But we wish you every success. And it really is a truly amazing story. And, you know, jockeys I think they're mad, but they're the bravest people in the country. And we wish you every success for the future.
Thanks very much. I appreciate that.
Time now for a look at the biggest sporting events taking place this weekend. I'm pleased to say we're joined, as usual, in the studio by sports broadcaster Aidan McGee. So, Aidan, are you up for a racehorse with Brian Toomey? That's the first question we've got to ask.
Not necessarily that, but I will say, you know, earlier in your programme you talked about sensitive souls.
Yeah, you're not a sensitive soul, are you?
Not particularly, but, you know, one of the most sensitive animals is a jump horse. They always take offence.
Oh, no.
Do you know what? We've had some lousy jokes today, and
that's gone straight in at number one in the lousy joke stage.
By my standards. I did it on the move. There you go.
Oh no! Let's get off the subject of horses. So, Champions League final. This is obviously Esther's big thing.
Is your dad going?
He's there. He's on. I mentioned a little bit earlier. He said, "Es, text me. I'm on the plane. Would you do us a favour and tape the show?" So I'm glad he had his priorities right.
I reckon by about 5 o'clock this evening, when the last planes land into Charles de Gaulle, there'll be about 100,000 Scousers in Paris. They're taking over the bars already. It's a hell of an occasion. There was the issue over the pitch earlier on. I think you made reference to it earlier on about the pitch. Now, you know, Jurgen Klopp was saying, I don't know if he's asked about it in his press conference. I'm not sure it was common knowledge prior to, but the pitch was only laid on 1 o'clock on Thursday morning.
Unbelievable.
No,
that is unbelievable.
It is, but you have to understand, it's not just rolls of turf that you know, I can get down the garden centre, you know, which I've thrown in my back garden every now and again, you know, when I was lucky enough to not have concrete. But they're Deso pitches. It's weaved in with plastic. It's protected. It's just slotting into place. Yes, it's not ideal. It does still take a little bit of time for the seed to bed in, but it's 60% plastic. So it hooks onto a mesh, and probably only two blades out of 6, out of half a dozen, would be an actual blade. And it's a new route grown in a lab. It's not the grass that we would see down at the park. I think it'll be all right.
So who's going to win?
Look, I think what I would say, Real Madrid are battle-hardened. This will be the third English team they've played. They've played This will be the third English side they've played in the Premier League, but it'll also be they've played the top 3. They've played Chelsea and beaten them, having come from behind. They did the same against Manchester City. They pulled victory from the jaws of defeat and won that one 6-5 on aggregate. Liverpool, though, will be different. They're more wizened around the Champions League. They've been there recently. They're suffering what they saw as a little, not necessarily injustice, but they were hard done by last weekend. They were 2-0 down at Manchester City against Villa and turned it around. Probably should have won it at Liverpool. So I think that if they play anywhere near their best, as Jamie Carragher said, I think there is a good chance they will win. But with Real Madrid, you just don't know. They've had a hard route through. Liverpool haven't had such a hard route through. I still think 55-45 in favour of.
Oh, it's got to be more. Liverpool are a much better team than Real Madrid.
They are, but sometimes in sport, Phil, it's just not like that. It's about on the day. It's about managing the occasion. I felt Liverpool should have won in 2018, but it was the game smartness of Real Madrid and a little bit of a few of the dark arts as well.
But those 100,000 Scousers there, Liverpool's going to win.
Yeah, all right. I saw your dad will agree with this as well, yeah.
And then the Monaco Grand Prix?
Yeah, that's right. Well, we saw, it was interesting, just while we're on the subject of Grand Prix, we saw Bernie Ecclestone had a gun in his luggage yesterday, travelling from Sao Paulo. He lives in London, Switzerland and Brazil, but he said he admitted it was his. It was taken out of his luggage, and he was allowed to board the plane. That's what real wealth does for you. I'm not sure we'd have been allowed to board the plane. But yeah, in terms of Monaco, Lewis Hamilton's going to compete. His jewellery ban has been, well, his exemption has been carried over to the British Grand Prix, which is a little bit further down the line. So he's going to compete. I still think he's smarting from what happened at the end of last season. He's blaming his car. I mean, if you look at some of the quotes, he's saying that, you know, there are like 100 bumps in just one straight. He said that the Mercedes car just isn't up to scratch. It's been referenced again or evidenced again.
See, this is what really irritates me, as Esther knows, because I keep going on about this. These drivers, if they win, it's all down to them.
Yeah.
And when they're at the back, it's all down to the car. Well, either it's down to... I mean, surely when they win, it means it's down to the car as well, surely.
Yeah, well, it's
can't be both ways, can it?
It's no different to a football manager, isn't it? You know, when they're winning, he's the genius, and when they're losing, it's the players who need to go. But, I mean, it's the blame culture in all of sport, really. But I do think that sometimes you see it. I remember when Arsenal lost out on the treble in '99, they suffered a real hangover going into the next season. It was it could have gone their way. It went Man United's way. And they suffered at the start of the season. I'm seeing with a relatively quick turnaround as well from the end of the thrilling F1 climax we saw earlier at the end of last year.
And a brief answer on the Chelsea takeover?
Yeah, that's right. It's been approved today by the government in the last hour or so. It was approved by the Premier League with the owners and directors test on Tuesday. The government can now grant a licence. It's no surprises. It's who we expect. It's Todd Bowley and his consortium. He's got a lot to do to get in there. He's got to sort out some contracts. They've got a wage bill of £28 million per month. They probably want to trim that. They want to stop sacking manager Salford as well. Antonio Conte, who left 4 years ago, they paid him £26 million to leave. They've got to stop doing that because I think it's going to be run along more sort of commercially sensible lines, if you will, whereas Roman Abramovich loaned the club £1.5 billion. That worked out a loss of about £900,000 since 2003 per month. Per week, that is. So you've got to have quite unique. They say you need money to make money. I think that's a good case in point.
In football, you need money to lose money.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
Not to make money.
That's
it's
true.
a good way of, just throwing it down the drain, isn't it? Aidan, thank you so much.
I've got my joke book behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Rip that up.
Get a new one if you don't mind.
See you next week. Thank you very much indeed, Aidan McKenna. Well, we've had another cracking show today. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. Thank you for all of your views too. So that's it from us today. Obviously, next is Alistair and Friends, so don't go anywhere. Watch him.
Good morning, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update. Bit of a chilly one out there this morning, but for most of us, it's going to be a fine Friday with dry, bright weather, plenty of sunshine and lighter winds compared to yesterday. High pressure is slowly moving in and breaking up this weather front, bringing, as I say, for most of us, a fine day. But notice the isobars fairly close together there across Scotland, so still quite windy here with a fair few showers coming in, mostly north of the central belt, but showers on the heavy side in places this morning before easing off this afternoon. From the central belt southwards, the vast majority staying dry. Certainly plenty of sunshine across the Midlands, Wales, southern and eastern England, and lighter winds compared to yesterday. And although it's a bit fresh out there right now, temperatures ticking up by this afternoon, feeling pretty pleasant, 21, maybe 22 Celsius. Cooler further north and certainly still pretty fresh for the time of year in northern Scotland with a few showers and a stiff wind. The showers will continue to fade through this evening. Most of us are going to be dry. Temperatures will drop quite sharply this evening, though, so bear that in mind if you have outdoor plans. It's going to be another chilly one tonight and a pretty cold start to Saturday for the time of year, well down into single figures. Certainly in rural areas, we could be as low as 2 or 3 degrees. So, yes, chilly for Saturday morning, but again, it's going to be a blue sky morning, lots of sunshine around. Again, the main exception will be northeast Scotland, where it'll still be breezy with maybe a few showers. Cloud is expected to develop through the day tomorrow, particularly over eastern England. There's a small chance of a shower or two here, but for most it's going to stay dry. Again, temperature's not spectacular, but feeling okay in the sunshine. A cooler feel on some of these North Sea coasts as that northerly breeze continues. And that's going to be very evident on Sunday, bringing much more cloud across the country. Quite a grey day and a chilly day as well. But still on Sunday, many of us